Good afternoon and welcome to the Tuesday, June 9th, 2020 Public Works Committee. We will start with a roll call and determination of quorum, please.
Evans?
Here.
Stroman? Here. Roberts? Quorum is present.
Thank you. And now we will move to the adoption of the agenda. We have a motion by Mr. Stroman and a second by Mr. Evans. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Moving on to our general public comment. This is the time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the committee on any issue, not limited to items on the agenda. Action will not be taken at this meeting on any issue not on the agenda except by placement on the agenda by a unanimous vote of the council members present. Do we have any?
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir. Mr. Tech, you have the floor.
if I may have a point of privilege, please.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Today is the 48th anniversary of the devastating flood that occurred June 9th, 1972. I'd like this committee to take a moment of silence to honor the 238 lives that were lost that day.
Absolutely. Thank you. We'll do a moment of silence. Please participate if you will. Thank you. Okay, moving along. Public comment is now open. Do we have anybody that wishes to speak? If not, we will close public comment and we will move along to our consent items 1 through 20. Is there anybody that would like to pull something from our agenda? Mr. Evans would like to pull number 2. Anyone else? Mr. Tech, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to pull item number 18. Assistant Public Works Director Dan Kuhn's going to give a short presentation on that item.
Thank you. Okay, I would welcome a motion for consent items 1 through 20 with the exception of 2 and 18.
Move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Mr. Stroman, a second by Mr. Evans. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And motion passes. Okay, moving to item 2. Mr. Evans, you have the floor.
Thank you. Later on, we're going to be asked to approve nearly $700,000 for an engineering study, which I strongly support. I think it's really necessary. We hire the best people so we get the best value. We have a unified plan of attack and then a unified execution of any design we do. And I go back to this. Well, for instance, I'm going to ask you, humor me a little bit. If we were designing the new water tower that's eventually going to go in Rapid Valley, so would you trust a guy who maybe put in a sprinkler line in his house to do that design? No. What about, we're refinishing some of these streets. Just because a guy poured a new concrete stoop in his patio, you trust? No. Well, my point is that we're spending $7-8 million overall in this building. Again, I haven't seen a unified design, but I don't know why who's picking the furniture, and perhaps there is somebody that is doing it. But just because somebody, likes something doesn't mean they're qualified to do it. I think we should have had an interior designer making sure that the overall concept and execution of this building is unified, and we should have been presented with presentation boards to see what we're getting for our $7.5 million, so that when it's all done, we have a beautiful facility. Never did see any of those things. Now, just as with other areas in our culture, you have people that spend their lives in expertise, and we have to realize a building like this is not our building. We are stewards of this facility. It's lent to us to take care of, and we don't get to pick and choose what we like for it. Choices, aesthetics, usability, all those things should be determined because they're good, they function, they're economical, and they actually are going to fulfill the whole intent of the facility and what it's for. So I'm just a little concerned. I'm going to approve this, but again, I disagree with what's going on in the overall remodeling of this, because I think when we're said and done, it may be newer, I don't think it's going to be as beautiful a facility as we had. So thank you. That's my only comment.
Thank you, Mr. Evans, and I did that wrong. I should have read that in prior to his comments, so forgive me. All right, so item number 2 is to authorize staff to purchase additional and replacement office furniture from Evergreen Office Solutions. Pricing from state contract number 16773 IFB 222 in the amount of $25,959.16. There's no further discussion. I'd welcome a motion, please. We have a motion to approve by Mr. Evans and a second by Mr. Stroman. All in favor? Aye. Okay, motion carries. Moving along to our item number 18. Authorize mayor and finance officer to sign a professional service agreement with Burns and McDonald Engineering Company, Inc. for a solid waste master plan project number 19-2561 in the amount of $680,000. And I think we have a presentation. Mr. Tuck?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to introduce Dan Kuhn. He's the Assistant Public Works Director and also is leading up the management of this project. He's got a short presentation to give you in regards to this item.
Thank you, Mr. Tech and members of the committee. As Dale said, I'd like to give a short presentation on the solid waste master plan, the agenda item before you today. Just to give you a little background on the solid waste division, some general information. The solid waste division is one of 3 utilities that are in the Public Works Department along with the water and sewer divisions. So it's one of the 3 enterprise funds that are self-supported funds within the Public Works Department. The Solid Waste Division has approximately 20,700 residential accounts. Those are the accounts that they actually go out on the street with the trucks and service every week, and about 500 commercial accounts. Now, those accounts do not include individuals who may come to the landfill once or twice a year to dispose of some items. These are actual accounts that are billed on a monthly basis. The Solid Waste Division, mainly the landfill, is a regional landfill. It has a service area that extends from Newell to about Hot Springs, Pine Ridge, and Badlands National Park to the east, and then Deadwood to the west. The landfill itself began its operation at its current location in the mid-1960s. The material recovery facility began operation in 1996. And most of the machinery, components, and systems in that facility are the original equipment from 1996. So it's nearing 25 years of life. The co-compost facility began operations in 2003. And the machinery, components, and systems are the original equipment that was installed in 2003. So that facility is 17 years old, fairly tough operating conditions, somewhat corrosive, dusty environment that the machinery and components operate in. The goal of the Solid Waste Master Plan project is to build the foundation for the Solid Waste Division planning for the next 20 years. And this is something that we do with our other enterprise funds within the Public Works Department, our water and sewer divisions. It's very common for us. In fact, we've done multiple either master plans or facility plans for those 2 divisions. For whatever reason, we have not followed that type of planning effort for the solid waste division. And so this is our initial step to bring us into more in line with our other utilities and develop both short and long-term plans. I look at it as we're building the foundation for the house that we need to build out at that facility. And so what we're going to do with this master planning effort is the first thing we have to figure out is where are we at? Because if we don't know where we're at, we don't know where we need to go. So a big part of this effort will be to build that foundation is where we're at right now. Just some of the key components. We have 3 operational elements out at our solid waste division: the landfill, the material recovery facility, co-compost operation, and then collections, the actual garbage trucks that people see on the street. A key component in any solid waste facility is to evaluate the landfill airspace. How are you utilizing that airspace and how are you managing it? Because it's a finite item. You only have a finite amount of airspace available at your landfill, and you need to use it as wisely as you can. We'll evaluate each element of the operations for all of the operations out there. Are we doing what we need to do? Can we do it better? Can we change something and get a different set of eyes on it instead of us thinking, well, we're doing great, which we are, I believe, but is there something we can do a little bit better? I think we need to evaluate each of the elements' assets. As I said, we have assets out there that are 25 or more years old, and they are starting to wear out, and they are going to wear out at some time in the future. And so we need to evaluate where are we at, and then try to evaluate and develop a capital improvement needs for not only the next 5 years, but over the next 20 years. What are we going to do out there? And then how do we then replace those assets on a timely basis instead of waking up one day and realizing we need a new piece of equipment or a new electrical system. That's a very tough way to operate any kind of facility. We'll evaluate and confirm our service area. Part of this will be doing a cost of service analysis. What does it cost us to provide these services? And are we then charging for the services correctly, and are we charging the right people? Same type of cost of service analysis that we did a couple years ago for the water and sewer divisions. And then an implementation plan. Okay, we've evaluated where we're at, where we want to go, how are we going to make it work, both short-term and long-term. One of the items that we will develop, and this will be done partway through the master planning effort, we hope to put together a stakeholders group that after we've done our initial evaluation to know where we're at and what assets do we have, what needs do we have, we'd like to sit down with the stakeholder group made up of whoever the council feels are the right people, maybe council members, members of the community, someone with interest in our solid waste division, to figure out, okay, this is where we're at from a philosophical standpoint, where would we like to see the solid waste division go in the future? So I would expect that this is a one-year project that we have. Our completion date is right now May of 2021, probably fourth quarter towards the end of this year. We would put together the stakeholder group and then figure out where we need to go forward with the solid waste division, or at least get input on that. So with that, I believe that's the end of my presentation. If I'm available to answer any questions or any comments that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Kuhn. We have some people in the queue. Mr. Stroman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Kuhn invited me to the interviews of the various engineering firms that submitted proposals for this long-range study, and we sat through those interviews, and I was blown away by the expertise and the knowledge of these engineering firms that wanted to make their proposal to the city, and I learned a lot more about our landfill. It's not just about burying garbage. If you listen to Mr. Kuhn's presentation, that the key component analysis, it's huge, and it's vital to our community to have a way to deal with all the waste that we produce. I mean, we've even seen that in the last couple of weeks when there was just a huge outcry over the yard waste receptacles that we have. So anyway, this is an extremely important thing for our community going forward, and I know that Mr. Kuhn and his staff have been very conscientious in dealing with this. I think that they had a survey. Each of us that listened into the interviews had a survey that we had to complete, and we ranked the presenters, and I think that they have selected the best engineering firm for this project, and I think that we should go ahead and approve this as part of just good government.
Thank you, Mr. Stroman, for sharing your comments as well as your experience with that. I commend you for being involved like that. Mr. Evans, you have the floor.
Thank you. We're spending this, and I agree with everything Mr. Stroman said. It's critically important to the success of the community that this be done well. I do, again, have a little problem with our process in this town. What exactly is the document going to contain when it's completed? Is that going to be our vision for what we have? And the reason I bring this up, as a person who's trained in architecture, when you hire somebody to do something, you mentioned a house. You can go hire the greatest architect in the world and say, build me a house. And he comes in with this plan for a mansion, and then you say, when all this work is done, you know, I really only wanted a weekend apartment to put a suitcase down when I'm stopping over. And so we get way down into this process, and the people doing the work don't really know what our vision is. And that's our problem. And I think the council has a little bit of a requirement. I mean, these people can give you various visions of what they see, but that doesn't tell them where to be emphasizing. Do we want to be a community that is strongly into recycling? Are they going to provide those options? My only question is, in the stakeholders group appears somewhere way down the line when it may be too late to really influence the way they look at things, because depending on what they think their mission is, you're going to get many different, you might get a completely different, document at the end of this study. And that bothers me because it seems backwards from the way it should be. There should be some direction from our council as to where we want our city to be. I was really proud. I was in like 6th or 5th grade when the new waste treatment plant was built. And my dad worked for Kiewit, and he's a contractor, and I made him drive me out because I thought it was so cool. We got these new dome buildings, state-of-the-art. It's going to recycle all this gas and run these motors to be self-sufficient. I thought that was really great. I was really proud when we were ahead of the curve on recycling, and I went down to Colorado to graduate school, and I said, where's the recycling? They were doing nothing. We were so far ahead at one point. And so my question is, are we going to get a document we just rubber stamp, and is it going to really reflect the way we want the community to be going? Because, for instance, as a member of the Sustainability Committee, are these people going to make that a priority? And is it our city's priority? So that's my only comment about this. Again, I don't like the way these processes happen. I think they're all necessary, but I do think they're out of order, because when you go to design something, you have to know what the design is going to be. And perhaps this doesn't include any sort of detail work, but it's going to tell us where we're at and where we could go. Does it give us options? So maybe you could explain a little bit about what this completed study will actually be like for us to look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are good comments. You're correct in that this is not a design project. We're not developing design plans. We're not going down that road. This is a planning document to allow short-term and long-term at the solid waste division. The reason that we're holding off or bringing in the stakeholder group at a later date is we need to do our homework before we take those people's time as to where we want to go long-term. There's a work that needs to be done on where are we at right now? What is our assets? What is the life of our existing assets? How much does it cost to replace those assets or repair them or do that? And you have to have that type of information to allow the stakeholder group to make an informed decision as to where you would then like to go in the future. Because you cannot take dollars out of the equation. It's going to cost something to do whatever you want to do. So we brought the stakeholder group in initially, and they said, well, we'd like to do that. Okay, give us 3 months and we'll do our homework and we'll develop what that might take. At least now, with this approach, we feel we'll have done our homework. We'll maybe not be 100% there, but we'll be 80 or 90% of the way there, so that when we look at visions and look at places we want to go, we'll be able to develop that information and look at those options in a lot better time frame. Instead of, essentially, we need to be fair to the stakeholder group. Their time is valuable. It's going to be volunteer people. We want to be prepared to help them and answer questions as best we can. And if we don't do our homework first, we're not going to be there when they step in and want to provide their input.
More comment? And I think that's great. I just think that we've got to make sure that the people doing the study are aware that we have no limits on this. And we may wish to be the most ecologically sound, most recycling community in the nation. Maybe that's part of our shtick when we say we're a destination. So just so they know, this isn't like matter of fact, this is the kind of work we'll get her done, So the stakeholders actually do have options to choose from. So that's my only concern about this. And so I think we need to have some direction to them, like, okay, pie for the sky, sky's the limit sort of thing. And so that we don't limit ourselves too early in the process, so that the options that the stakeholders are presented with, like, well, I didn't even know that was possible, So that's my only concern, but thank you.
Good discussion. I do have one question. Are we able to have this presentation posted for the public to see as well?
Absolutely. We'll link this presentation to the agenda for council on
I
Monday
think the
night.
communication is the key here, so thank you, Mr. Kuntz, Mr. Tech. Okay, I read it in. I believe we need a motion.
Second.
We have a motion to approve by Mr. Stroman, a second by Mr. Nordstrom. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, moving on. Items for Parks and Recreation. Oh, wait, we already did that. We are at the end of the consent calendar. We're moving to the non-consent items. We have public comment open and closed. Okay. Now we have one more item from the Public Works Department, Engineering, number 21, request from Western Housing Enterprises, LLC, for the exception to allow more than 40 dwelling units with 1 point of access per Section 2.6 of the Infrastructure Design Criteria Manual, IDCM. A single access can only serve 40 dwelling units unless an exception is approved by City Council. The staff recommendation is to approve with stipulations, and I have been informed that Cale McNamara is here. Should we have any questions that we want to direct to him or the fire department? If not, Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Evans, you have the floor.
Again, Councilman Krabby Appleton here has a comment. My only concern with this, and I went out and drove it now, and I'm going to trust the people we hire to make these decisions, that they're making the right one. My concern is some of the wording that I've been dealing with in the last year I've been on the council, and all of these legacy things. The developer of Diamond Ridge indicates extension of home state may begin within a calendar year, depending on the demand for lots, might take 6 months. might never. Do we have anything, and I guess this is a question for Mr. Tech, I don't know who deals with this. Do we have anything in writing that commits these people that are making these gentlemen's agreement that we keep having to go back and solve 10, 15 years later with sidewalks and everything else? Is there anything in writing that's going to make people follow through on this? That's my only question.
Mr. Tech?
Thank you. Absolutely not. There is nothing out there that's a guarantee. However, the way development's occurring in Rapid City, the developer of this area is highly committed to going full speed ahead. I have no reason to doubt that these roads won't be built in a timely fashion. I guess maybe I'll end my comments with, at least there's something there. There have been many cases in the past where things have been approved where there's no possibility whatsoever of ever having a solution. And this one does have a solution that appears to be imminent.
And so it goes back to what I brought up several times. I think the city needs to find another vehicle for working with developers where we change and we do all of this infrastructure stuff to make sure it's done. And I know that it's a problem of money. I think we need to revisit the whole way we do this and get more in line with some other communities that seem to be more successful and not rely on the goodwill of developers to maybe follow through and make all these exceptions and jerry-rig the sewer so it fits together because the city's planned it out and it works the way it's going to work, and then we don't have these problems in 10 years. So that's the only reason I'm bringing it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Mr. Stroman, you have the floor.
Thank you. May I direct a question to Division Chief Bellings, please?
Absolutely.
Tim, you've looked at this scheme out there, and you've made some conclusions about whether this is a suitable place for this variance. Is that right?
Correct.
Can you tell us what you did and how you what that resulted in?
Sure, absolutely. As this request came through for exception on it, I looked at the type of development that was occurring in the area, understanding that it is an existing roadway that serves the area, but the added development will be fire sprinkler protected. There's multiple buildings on site. I believe there's 2 accesses in and out of that particular apartment complex, which from an emergency services standpoint, even though it's currently a single access point, since it is fire sprinkler protected, it reduces the risk of fire event, catastrophic fire within that area. But it also, if there's other emergency services needed in the area where the roadways are blocked or whatever, that type of development allows us the opportunity to better control ingress and egress out of there. In fact, if there was something going on in the neighborhood, we could actually hold people and defend in place within that complex or that area to allow others to evacuate first or allow emergency services in. So, and then lastly, I really did take a look at the fact that knowing that development is occurring quite rapidly out there, as Mr. Tech identified, I'm pretty confident that we'll see that road system have a more than one way in and out of it in the very near future. So,
Okay, thank you, Chief.
you're welcome.
I'm done.
Any more discussion? If not, I'd welcome a motion. A motion to approve by Mr. Evans, second by Mr. Stroman. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay, I'd welcome a motion to adjourn from Mr. Stroman and Mr. Evans. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay, motion adjourned. We have a Legal and Finance Committee meeting tomorrow at 12:30 in these chambers, as well as a City Council meeting on Monday, June 15th at 6:30 in these chambers. Thank you all. Have a good day.